everybody. I'm Jason McNew. I drove up yesterday from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I brought some of my kids with me. They're over in the corner over there. I've been in IT for 25, probably going on 30 years, I guess you would say, because, and we were just talking about this before, IT is really kind of a trade, isn't it, right? It's both a trade and a profession. And the reason I say that is because you can start learning IT in your bedroom in 6th grade. You get a Raspberry Pi and start programming. You don't do that as a nurse or an accountant or anything like that. But in any case, I'm also a United States Air Force veteran, so the discussion about suicide prevention I appreciate that, thank you. That's something the veteran community talks about a lot. Veteran of the United States Air Force, I spent 12, 13 years at the White House Communications Agency. The Air Force put me there. So I spent a lot of years working in buildings with no windows, surrounded by barbed wire and machine guns and that kind of stuff. Sort of these extreme security environments. Secret, top secret SCI, special access programs, those kinds of things. In 2017, I started a small consulting practice called Stronghold Cybersecurity. And I was doing cybersecurity consulting, mainly with the Defense Industrial Base. Educationally, I have a master's degree in cybersecurity from Penn State and a couple of other degrees as well. I'm also a CISSP, Certified Information Systems Security Professional. So let's move on here. 1998, don't get into strangers' cars, don't meet people from the internet. 2017, literally summon strangers from the internet to get into their car, right? We're talking about Uber and Lyft here, right? And the reason why I point this out is because there's two things here. Number one, the technology's advanced radically in the last 20 or 30 years, right? I see a lot of Gen Xers here, right? A couple, maybe some millennials, and the technology's advanced, just radically. It's not only has the technology advanced radically, but also our culture has changed. Attitudes towards privacy and security are very, very different between the various generations. And these are things that have to be taken into account when we talk about security. And who was it that said earlier, security isn't something that you buy, it's something that you do. That is absolutely true. So what is cybersecurity? And I'm going to read this. Cybersecurity is the body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect computers, handheld and other internet-connected devices, networks, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. And if you go to school or you get a certification, you might have to learn that, but cybersecurity is the business of managing risk. That's what it is, a professional risk manager. So for pretty much any business, it's going to be a cost center, and cybersecurity only makes sense to the extent that it's going to save you money or reduce business risk in a way that we can actually quantify and measure. We're not in the business of spending piles of money on people, process, and technology, and blinking lights. That's what we did at WACA. We screwed down the White House Communications Agency. We would screw down everything as tight as it would possibly go because we had unlimited amounts of money, which was taken from your paycheck. But small businesses are just not like that. They don't have unlimited budgets. We have to work with what we have. So we're going to talk about the cyber threat landscape and the small to mid-sized business. We're going to talk about advanced protective technologies like SIEM and MDR. And then we're going to talk about security and risk assessments. And these SIEM and MDR and security risk assessments, these are things that you could talk to ACS about. It's one of core competencies for them. This pie chart is interesting. Internet users distribution in the world, 2021. Less than 7% of the world's internet users are actually in North America, right? Most of them are outside of North America. Asia, Europe, Africa, Middle East. And in spite of that, look at the target rates up here. Despite the fact that only 7% of the world's internet users are in North America, most of the targeting, 93.9% according to this, is on America, right? And the world still revolves around America. We export a lot of things. We have technology, entertainment, culture, and the reason for this is when people in other countries, they look at TV, they see American entertainment. Everybody has a gigantic house, and they have a beautiful family, and they have an in-ground pool and a Lexus and all this other stuff. So that old thing about the streets being paved with gold, a lot of people still believe that overseas. America, the streets are paved with gold. And a lot of what's going on really is just good old-fashioned robbery. The Soviet Union, remember that? The reason I bring that up is because for all of its other failings, the STEM, what we now call STEM, education in the communist bloc, was actually really good. And it still is. If you talk to kids from Eastern Europe, we have a new colleague, I think, from maybe Moldova or Romania or something like that. And she was commenting that the math that her kids are taking is 3 years behind what they were taking in Romania. So you have, in this area of the world, you have a large amount of people. They have good education, right? They're not dumb by any stretch of the imagination. They have a lack of economic opportunity, and this all boils down to plain old extortion. So what do? They are robbing Americans or Europeans or Japanese or whoever it is that they perceive to be rich. And there's other reasons that contribute to this. The jurisdictional thing. So in most of what we call the developed world, the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, North Korea, or South Korea, not North Korea, it's totally different things. There are legal prohibitions against hacking both inside and outside of your border. So me as an American, I can't hack Russians, I can't hack South Americans, I can't hack Europeans, I can't do any of that. But if you're a citizen of, there's a lot of countries where there's no laws on this stuff at all, or the laws only say you can't hack within your own country. So you set up a ransomware shop in Belarus or something like that, and you're targeting Americans. The Belarusian authorities aren't going to do anything about that. They don't care. They have enough other problems. So what they're doing, while it's immoral and unethical, it's not actually illegal where they're doing that, and they're leveraging all these facts in order to target with ransomware. All organizations are targets, nonprofits, small to mid-sized businesses, by financially motivated organized crime actors. And for the most part, this stuff is just good old-fashioned robbery. It's like Wild West, like robbing a stagecoach or robbing a train or robbing a bank or whatever. And if you're going to pick a target to rob, you're going to rob a soft target, right? You're going to go out into the middle of nowhere and rob a bank there, or rob a stagecoach that's not protected. You're not going to go rob a stagecoach where there's 5 people with rifles on it. They pick soft targets, and that's why the SMBs are such popular targets for these threat actors. I've got a couple definitions. Dwell time. Anybody heard of dwell time? Dwell time is, Warren, I know you do. I know some of the guys from ACS do. But dwell time is the amount of time. This is when the bleeding starts. Dwell time is when a threat actor gets into your system. They've compromised it. They've installed a backdoor or a toehold or something like that. And dwell time is the amount of time between when that happens and when we actually catch what's going on. And most of the time, a small business won't know that this is going on until they advertise their presence with some type of an attack. This is when the bleeding starts, and if bleeding starts, we need to stop bleeding right away. That's triage at this point, and the faster we could catch that, the less of a problem there's going to be. New ransomware attack occurs every 11 seconds. These statistics are all over the place. This particular one is from Fiserv. But the thing is with this is ransomware attacks and cyberware attacks in general, we don't have all of the data, right? Think about violent crime or vehicular accidents, homicide and stuff like that. We have a really good idea what the rates are on this stuff because it tends to get reported to the police. Cybercrime and ransomware, it doesn't get reported many, many times. So our statistics, we have a pretty good idea, but they're not bulletproof. And somebody asked me, well, how pervasive is this? And I thought about it for a second. I said, it's probably about as pervasive as graffiti, if you can imagine that. And I think that's probably true. Imagine if you tried to have, we're in a big city, right? You have problems with graffiti. Imagine if you tried to have law enforcement clean up all the graffiti. It would be an untenable problem. It's not even possible. So if your building gets tagged with graffiti, you're going to be the one that's out there scrubbing it off because there's nobody else to do it. And that's kind of how ransomware is with the small to mid-sized business. So the government, the FBI, and the state governments are getting a little bit better with this. But in general, you're kind of mostly going to be on your own with that. Hasn't happened to us yet. Don't hold your breath. As I mentioned before, really any information system, if you're operating an information system 24/7, 365, this would be like if we went out and we bought a house in Galveston, Texas, or in Tampa or something like that, or on the coast of Florida. You know what's going to happen. Eventually there's going to be a storm, right? Storm's going to come in. And we hope that that storm is just going to be a tropical storm, but it might be a Cat 1 or a Cat 3 or a Cat 5. So if you're going to buy a house on the coast of Florida, you would get insurance, you would have plywood in your basement, you would have bottles of water, you might print out some maps to egress the area, you would have yourself sort of an incident response plan, right? And cybersecurity is the same way. We need to get ahead of that in advance and be ready for that before it happens, not when it happens. By the way, if anybody has any questions or wants to throw in a comment, my speaking style is very loose and extemporaneous. Feel free to just interrupt me, but we have some statistics here. Average dwell time for ransomware is 23 days. It's actually higher than that, so statistics a little bit low. Average downtime for ransomware is 21 days. So right off the bat, you're hemorrhaging 21 days of revenue. And they do that on purpose. They're going to put as much pressure as they can on you in order to get you to pay. And that is by design. Average cost of recovery reached $1.4 million in 2022. And that's all in. For small to mid-sized businesses, a ransomware attack could be just as devastating as a natural disaster or a building fire, something like that. Because you include the downtime, damage to system, lost data, reputational damage, impacts to employee morale. You could get fined if you have data, PHI, PII, or proprietary data. You could get fined for that. You could end up getting sued. So the numbers are very high. And they do that on purpose because they want to incentivize you to pay them in Bitcoin instead of all these things happen. More and more legislation globally. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Cyber insurance policy. I have a lot to say about cyber insurance. It's a different animal than regular insurance because it's, comparatively speaking, relatively new. Insurance has been around forever, right? You think Lloyd's of London, I think they insured the East India Trading Company, then that stuff's been around for hundreds of years. They know exactly what they're doing. Cyber insurance isn't like that. Impact of cyber warfare is truly untested today. Frankly, based on everything I know, I used to get these classified red briefings, and I'm shocked that we haven't seen any kind of attacks on our infrastructure at this point. Shocked and relieved, I should say. Impact to the reputation of a business is undeniable. Think about big businesses. It's interesting when the big ones, the really big ones like SolarWinds, Equifax, that actually drops their market cap by millions of dollars when these things are announced. It's crazy. SMBs and cybersecurity concerns. This is the Verizon 2022 data breach investigation report. Anybody read this or hear of it at all? Warren, I know you do. This thing's 100 or 120 pages. It comes out every single year since 2008. Verizon does a really good job on this. This is a big collaborative industry effort that goes across a bunch of different verticals. They work with education, they work with government, and this is a really great who's who of cybersecurity that we read every single year. So, according to Verizon, there's 4 key paths leading to the compromise of your estate. And I would happen to agree with this because I've done penetration testing. And penetration testing is when you hire somebody like me to break into your systems and then provide a report after that. And Verizon says, well, credentials, phishing, exploit vulnerabilities, and botnets. Credentials is usernames and passwords. Usernames and passwords are easy to steal. There's a bunch of different ways that we could do it. We could do brute force attacks, rainbow tables, social engineering. Phishing. We all know what phishing is, I think. Anybody here doesn't know what phishing. The reason that they do phishing is because it works. Who gets junk mail, right? Oil changes, windows, whatever that stuff is. The reason the marketing firms do that is because it works. It works reliably, and there's a reliable return on investment for this. So you know that they know that if they send out 1 million of these things, 30,000 people might read it, and then they might get 3,000 conversions or something like that, and the numbers are fairly reliable. And recently I went out to my mailbox, and there's a thing in there from Jiffy Lube, and my truck happened to need an oil change, so I threw it on the seat. That was a conversion for them, right? That wins. And that's exactly why they do phishing. Phishing is cheap and easy to do. I think something like 85% of the email that's traversing the globe daily is junk mail, most of it, literally most of it. So they do it because it works, the numbers are reliable, it's cheap and easy to do. Exploit vulnerabilities. An exploit vulnerability, typically we're thinking about malicious payload, virus, worm, Trojan, but that could also be social engineering, making phone calls, sneaking into buildings, dropping USB sticks in a parking lot. And then the last piece here is botnets. Does anybody know what a botnet is? Anybody could throw an explanation of it that's not in IT or?
What did you say about that again? They drop what in the parking lot?
USB sticks? That's an old trick. That doesn't work anymore. At least it shouldn't. I mean, if anybody in here found a USB stick in the parking lot, would you take it in and plug it into your desk at work? Hey, what is this? I think I'd sooner pick up a candy bar off the sidewalk and then eat it. But that used to work, but not so much anymore. Does anybody know what a botnet is? Anybody could explain it? How about my kids? You know what a botnet is? Kids? No? We don't know what a botnet is? Okay. They're not teaching that at school? So a botnet is why threat actors are interested in grandma's computer, or why they're interested in a computer in the back of a candy shop or something like that. So, they use automation to find things that are vulnerable, and then they install a backdoor in it, and then they'll review it after the fact. And they'll look in there like, oh, well, there's nothing here. This is useless to me. But what they do is they leave the back door in there. And then you might get 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 computers are in a botnet, right? And then these bots, they will all respond, they all report back to what's called a command and control server, so you can control 100,000 bots. Now, what I could do with all these bots is I could use them to attack a big hardened target. Let's say I want to attack Equifax, or I want to attack Target or something like that, right? I have a botnet. And oh, by the way, botnets, you could go onto the dark web and you could rent botnets by the hour, just like a cheap motel in a bad neighborhood for Bitcoins, and they do not care what you do with it. You can attack anything you want, they don't care, all you do is pay them. So you connect to a command and control server that might be sitting in Eastern Europe or something like that. Command and control server is directing 100,000 or 1 million computers that are all over the world, or they're in America, or they're in Europe, and then you're attacking something. In the military, this is something that we would refer to as a force multiplier. Any vets here, by the way? Any other vets? No? None of you ever had to sleep in a Humvee or on an airplane? No? Threat report security concepts. Assets, an asset is anything that has value in a company. I got to watch my time, I talk a lot. An asset, in cybersecurity, we're typically thinking about data, but this could be computers, servers, it could be individuals. Really anything that we need to protect from some type of a risk is going to be an asset, and it's going to be part of our overarching business continuity plan, cybersecurity plans. Threats are anything that has the potential to damage an asset. And there's two basic categories of threats, natural and then man-made. There's examples of those on the news that we could think of. Threat actors are persons or organizations carrying out a threat. And that could just be a script kiddie monkeying around in their computer, or it could be an advanced persistent threat that wants a piece of data that you have, People's Liberation Army, something like that. The worst threat actors, by the way, are inside. The insider threat is the most insidious. When you work in places like the White House or the Pentagon, you walk around, you'll see posters of Aldrich James and Robert Hansen and people like that. Those are extremely serious threats. By the way, in organizations like that, we simply assume that if you have 3,000 people, there's probably going to be 3 spies in there. So your insider threat programs are designed for all that. A vulnerability is an opening or a weakness in a system, and it could be something that's misconfigured, it's unpatched, it's past end of life. Maybe a technician removed the firewall rule and forgot to put it back. And it could also be a poorly trained individual that keeps clicking on cat emails or something like that. We always run into that. Exploits are the process of taking advantage of a vulnerability to attack. And again, exploits in cybersecurity, we're normally thinking about something that's automated, a piece of software. But an exploit, this could also be making a phone call or doing phishing or social engineering. Ransomware as a service simply is scale. Every business wants to scale. Now, these places, these ransomware outfits that are overseas, and some of them are not overseas, but they look, smell, act, and taste exactly like a real business. They have engineers, they have project managers, they have target lists, they have developers, they have a help desk, they have square footage, they have all of this. They operate exactly like a real business. It's just that what they're doing is immoral and unethical, but again, it might not be illegal where they are. So if you're a business, you have financial targets. Well, how do we scale? We want to make more money. Everybody wants to scale. Software as a service is a great way to scale. So what they do is they take their ransomware and then they create a kit out of it. And the kit is like a piece of IKEA furniture. There's everything that's in there, right? And if there's a screw missing, you call them up and you say, I'm missing a screw, send it to me. And they provide support and they patch their stuff and they provide updates. And then what they get is they get some percentage of the revenue back. So this is an easy way for them to say double or triple their revenue just by deputizing, what we sort of derisively call script kiddies. Anybody familiar with that term, by the way? If you want to make a hacker really angry, call them a script kiddie. A script kiddie refers to somebody that just downloads a piece of software that doesn't really know what it does, and then they piddle with it and they wreck something, but they don't really know what they're doing. But if you call hackers script kiddies, they get really mad. Go to Black Hat in Vegas and call people script kiddies. 2021 top threat actor profiles. And you may see some of these in the news, Lockbit, Avad, and Hive. Look over on the right here, though. This is important. TTPs. And TTPs is tools, techniques, and procedures. Or it might be tactics, tools, and procedures. I know so many acronyms between the military and IT, I can't keep them all straight. But let's compare this to a crime wave in a major city. We're in Boston. And you send out teams of detectives, and they go out and they look for fingerprints and broken glass. They'll look for footprints outside of a building. Those things are all clues. They're evidence. So you go out and you investigate a couple crimes, And you get an idea, okay, well, we know that this particular criminal did it. We don't have them yet because they broke in a certain way. This is what they did to the victim. This is what they did to cover up their tracks after the fact, so they operate certain ways. So when we respond to cyber incidents and we do forensics and we look at disk images and log files and all these other things, it gives us an idea who done it, so to speak. Because we look at the reconnaissance, we look at the payload, we look at what they did to hide their tracks after the fact, the demands, and this gives us an idea which one of these groups is responsible for whatever is going on. Paying the ransom really works. On average, 65% of data restored after paying the ransom. I think it's higher than that, actually. This is an RNO statistics. I see some deviation in it, 10, 15% in either direction. And law enforcement always says the same thing, and I'm not picking on them. Law enforcement will always say don't pay it. And law enforcement says that because they want the revenue streams to dry up. But imagine that you're a small business, like ACS, was started by father, handed off to son. And this ransomware attack happens, and your revenue is, you have no revenue now. So you have to make a decision, okay, well, if I pay this ransom, I have a 75% chance of getting my data back, or I'm going to go out of business. This is now or I'm going to be bankrupt. This is now a decision that's based on many complicated factors, including some very personal ones and your own tolerance for risk. Our objective really is to stop this from happening to small businesses in particular, because it's insidious, and they make it as hard as possible on purpose in order to get people to pay. The numbers keep going up. You know, they've gotten a lot better at their demands. It used to be that they would, remember Dr. Evil in that movie, $1 million, right? $1 million is like a joke. So they would attack Microsoft, and then the ransom would be $1 million but then they attack some small business and they want $10 million in and know what they're doing. Nowadays, once they get that toehold in there and they install the back door, they'll go and they'll do some reconnaissance. They try to get some idea using social media, LinkedIn, whatever's available, what your revenue is. And they tend to try and peg their demands to about 10% of top line revenue, right? And just because you might not be able to pay that. Not every business is going to be able to fork over 10% of revenue. There's a place not too far from me that sells farm equipment. Farm equipment is insanely expensive, right? And you'll look at their revenue. Well, their revenue is $20 or $30 million, but that doesn't mean that their EBIT is anywhere near that. They couldn't afford to pay 10% of their top line. There's no way. It's not even possible. Everyday challenges for nonprofits and the small to mid-sized business. This is why I'm in this particular role. I could probably go work for Microsoft or Google or whatever, but in this particular role, I'm working to protect the small to mid-sized business. And I've started my own business. I grew up in small to mid-sized business. My brother's self-employed. A lot of my family is self-employed, so I have a bit of a soft spot for it. So small businesses, you have enough to do as it is. A friend of mine runs a brewery in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He's about 50 employees, and you think about all the balls you have in the air at any given time running a brewery. You have a restaurant, you have all these employees that you're paying, you have EEOE, you have ADA, you have the food, the food regulations, the liquor regulations. Oh, and so while you have a small business owner and they're already juggling 5 balls, let's throw another one in there for that. Oh, by the way, if you drop that one, you're going to be in big trouble. So it's so much pressure on them. Balancing cybersecurity with your business challenges. You're trying to keep the lights on, and now we have to do this. It's difficult to manage cybersecurity with your other priorities. And for most small businesses, cybersecurity is going to be discretionary. Not all. Some of them have contractual requirements, or they have legal requirements to do it. But for most small businesses have to choose to do this because they need to reduce their risk. Complexity of shifting to a remote workforce. That's been underway for some time. COVID accelerated that. Poor cybersecurity skill sets in the organization. Cyber people are hard to find, they're hard to hire, and they're hard to retain. And the problem is only getting worse. And what's kind of exacerbated that, in my observation, has been the work from home movement. So what's happening is you have the big tech companies, they tend to be on the coast for the most part. And they are no longer shy about hiring people that live in Indiana or Iowa or Salt Lake City. They do not care. I live about 8 miles north of Gettysburg. I live in an orchard. I don't even have neighbors where I live. There's no police department. And I work for a big tech company and make good money. So the problem is what that's doing is it has an equalizing effect on labor. So just because I live in Podunk, it's still expensive to hire somebody because you're being employed by companies on the coast or something like that. It's driving the cost of the labor up. It makes it more difficult. Ad hoc business continuity and disaster recovery efforts. Again, the analogy before about the house on the coast of Florida, the time to get ready for a disaster that could ruin your business is now. And BCDR, business continuity and disaster recovery, cybersecurity is part of that. And one of my favorite examples of this is we have a partner that is in Kenosha. And I think you all remember what happened in Kenosha on the news, and they were right in the middle of that. But they had a mature practice BCDR plan in place, and what they did was they declared a disaster. They had an incident commander, they dispersed, and they had zero impact on service delivery. It was not fun for them. They worked a lot of hours. They were working from hotels. They were working from home, alternate locations. But their customers had no idea that they had relocated to another spot. Now think about if they didn't have that BCDR in place, and then this vandalism and burning was going on, they'd be out of business. Increased cost to respond and then recover from an event. It just costs, this stuff just keeps going up. I'll have the slides available on PDF after if anybody wants to take a look at some of these threat actor profiles. And they're just all over the place. Russia, China, North Korea, South America, wherever they happen to be. This information comes from ConnectWise. And ConnectWise, we serve, again, primarily, ultimately, the small to mid-sized business. I would say we're kind of like Snap-on, right? Snap-on sells tools to your independent mechanic. ConnectWise, we provide tools to our MSP partners, high-quality tools to our MSP partners. So I think it would be fairly stated that we have more information about the threats that are facing the small to mid-sized business than any other company, including probably Google or Apple or any of the big ones, the really big ones. We're only human. A person is involved at the center of most security events. I know this is true because I've done penetration testing, and what we normally find is we do our reconnaissance, we look for vulnerabilities, and then typically we find that the perimeter stuff is pretty well hardened, so we'll move on to phishing. Phishing, social engineering, and then we try to exploit people, and that basically means fooling a person into making some type of a poor decision that allows me to get into their system. Doing something for me, giving their password, something like that. 66% of breaches involve phishing or stolen credentials. Again, stealing usernames and passwords is easy to do. 2.9% of employees may click on phishing. It's higher than that, and it's not may, it's will. I think I'm going to change that to will. They definitely will. Again, it's just like the oil change in the mail. I know that if I send out 30,000 of those things, that a fairly fixed number are going to convert. So with all of that, organizations can significantly reduce their attack surface. It doesn't really reduce your attack surface per se, but it reduces, there's not a lot that we can do to reduce the probability of an attack, but we can do a whole lot to reduce the impact of an attack. There's some things we could do to reduce the probability. So we have a couple things here, and the first one is adopt email filters. Now an email filter, what this means is, let's say that Bob is sending an email to Alice. I don't want the email going from bob.com to alice.com directly. I want the email going from Bob to ACS, right? And they're going to run some type of a service that's going to scan the email, look at the payload, look where it came from, look at the headers, look at the attachments, and it could cross-reference with this massive database. And there's a bunch of different technologies that are available that could do this. And then after it chops off on this email, because 85% of it is junk anyway, then it's going to send it to alice.com, and then Alice can open it up. And even with that, we still want Alice to have all that endpoint protection in place, antivirus, patching, and all of these other things. Practice good password hygiene. At this point, I think that's kind of like telling people to brush their teeth. I'm not going to go over password hygiene too much, and then the other piece here, user training. User training is huge. And email filters and user training, neither one of these things are any longer expensive or difficult. There's a bunch of different, God bless free markets, there's so many different ways. There's so many different offerings on the market now that the prices have come way down. User training is another one that's very, very effective. You can get email filtering and user training through ACS. Good password hygiene and the multi-factor authentication. Remember what I was saying about usernames and passwords being easy to steal? That's true because I've done it. But multi-factor authentication is the hacker's worst enemy. Properly implemented, it can be defeated. It's not impossible to defeat it, but that's why we do defense in depth. But multi-factor authentication nowadays, it's no longer complicated or expensive. There's a bunch of free options. So I like to see it anywhere that you could reasonably put it, unless you're, signing up for free pizza or something like that. I have throwaway accounts for that kind of stuff. I don't use MFA on those. But that's what risk management means. Yes?
I was curious about those headers that they put on emails now that show that it comes from an external source. Do you find that to be
Yes.
effective?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it's flagged there. Let's say you get an email from the CEO, and it looks copacetic, but it's flagged external. You're like, I'm going to call the IT guy. Yes, that's effective. That's one of those things that the Department of Defense was doing years ago, and I've seen the private sector adopt that. Yes, I think that's effective, absolutely, and it's cheap and easy to do too. Most data thieves are organized professional criminals deliberately trying to steal data they can turn into financial gain. I get in my head of myself. I'm not one to just read my slides. I think I already kind of drove that point home. Just remember, like I said, they look, smell, act, and taste exactly like a real business. They have square footage, project managers, engineers, help desk, all those things. But what they're doing is robbing you. 40% of ransomware incidents involve RDP, desktop sharing software. Anybody know what RDP is? Anybody not know what it is? It's when you pop up a piece of software and then you connect to the desktop of a remote computer, you put in your username and your password, and then you can control that computer. And there are use cases for doing that. We see it in small businesses a lot. But if you have RDP exposed to the internet, then we need to put compensating controls on that. An assessment will find that, and then we could put VPN and multi-factor authentication on it, and we could put some other technologies. But ideally, we turn it off if we can, because RDP is a constant problem. 62% of intrusion incidents involve threat actors compromising business partners. This is exactly what happened in the case of Target. It was an HVAC contractor carried an infected laptop into I don't know if it was a data center or something like that. It was probably a data center. They plugged in the network, and then the threat actor moved laterally from the laptop into Target's network. We have the same exact issue in the defense industrial base. If you're, the Russian SVR and you're trying to steal plans off of Lockheed Martin, you're not going to break into Lockheed Martin. You could go and then look at the contracts for some airplane and then look and see who the subcontractors are, and you find some little machine shop that's in Podunk somewhere and you attack that, you compromise their email, and then you move up through the chain there. That's a very common tactic, and it's very effective. I like to throw gag slides in. We'll just take a left turn for a second here to wake everybody up. But this is Winston Churchill. And as I mentioned, I used to work at Camp David, and Churchill had been to Camp David a bunch of times. He and FDR had planned the invasion of the Normandy invasion on the one porch there. But anyways, this is Churchill and Lady Nancy Astor. And Churchill and Lady Astor were both born of American mothers or father. I know both of them had one American parent. But anybody ever see the movie Grumpy Old Man? These two are cantankerous, real cantankerous. You think Wilson was you think he was cantankerous? She was just as bad. But anyway, she was also the first female member of Parliament, and I think she served from 1919 until 1945. But anyway, she once said to Winston, she said, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your coffee." And he said to her, "Nancy, if I was your husband, I'd drink it." They actually liked each other, though. So now we're going to talk about SIEM, Security Information Event Monitoring, and MDR, Managed Detection and Response. These are some of the technologies that we're bringing into small to mid-sized business these days in order to protect you from all this awful stuff that I was just talking about. And again, having come from enterprise and extreme security, these are things that we had 15 years ago. Right? And it's been kind of a process through economies of scale and automation and certain labor practices, bringing the cost of these things down to the point where we could actually bring them to the small and mid-sized business. I had mentioned earlier multi-factor authentication. I went to a drill weekend, it must have been 20 years ago, and the commander says, "Oh, we're putting out multi-factor authentication." Well, what's that? At the time we didn't even know. But now here it is 20 years later, and we're starting to really see these technologies that I'd seen in advanced enterprise being available to the small to mid-sized business. And this is important because these threat actors know that the small businesses don't have this stuff. Yeah, they know Lockheed Martin and GE and Target have this stuff, but small mid-sized businesses don't. SIEM is Security Information Event Monitoring, and a SIEM works by collecting log data from devices on your network. And there's all these devices on your network. Most networks run 24/7, 365. So you have servers, routers, switches, laptops, IoT, these cameras. These things all generate logs. And in the enterprise, we get all these logs and we aggregate them and then we correlate them with other things so that we know what's going on, but this technology is only recently available in the small to mid-sized business space. Why do you need it? Auditing and compliance requirements. Depending on what vertical, what you do and who you do it for and where you are, you might have compliance requirements, whether they're from the Department of Defense or finance or some other thing. It provides full visibility of everything that's happening in the network. It's kind of like when we pair SIEM with MDR and EDR, it's kind of like an AWAC plane. If you know what an AWAC plane is, right? It's a 737 or 707 with a disc on top with a stripe, right? Flies over the battlefield and it looks at troops and tanks and ships and missiles and ground noise. And then if you just see tanks moving, well, we're not going to worry about that. You just see troops moving, we're not going to worry about that. But if we see tanks and troops and airplanes, well, we're going to correlate that. Now we have an issue. And these are the things that these advanced technology can do for you. That's something that needs to be up-channeled to a battlefield commander, somebody that can take some type of an action. Detailed forensic analysis in the event of major security breaches. Remember what I mentioned earlier about TTPs, tools, techniques, and procedures. One of the first things that they'll do when they break in is they go in and they erase the log files, and they erase fingerprints, they clean up the blood. But the SIEM will take these log files and then it uploads them into our cloud, and then it secures them and encrypts them. So even if they erase everything, we still have that evidence that we need in order to figure out what's going on. SIEM is kind of an abstract concept, though. The problem with SIEM engineers, well, SIEM is a critical protective and detective technology. We love SIEM, it's great. But it's kind of hard to explain what it does. So when we go to a decision maker to sign the contract, they're like, what does this do? I don't understand this. What does it do? And I have a whole 45-minute presentation that explains to a non-technical person what SIEM does. And the users stop cooking fish in the microwave. And the reason I say it doesn't affect the user experience in any way. It doesn't make your computer faster, it doesn't make it slower, it doesn't make it happy, it doesn't make it sad, there's no blinking lights, none of that. So it doesn't affect the users at all. SIEM works by collecting log data, work from home employees, workstations, the servers, network devices. We could put a sensor on your network that will inspect all of the traffic, cloud integrations, applications, and then all these things are sent to our Security Operations Center where they can be run through a fusion and correlation engine, and then we have a good idea what's going on. ConnectWise, and by extension ACS, our Security Operations Center, last I heard, with 180 people in it. It has 180 employees, and it operates 24/7, 365 in order to watch what's going on at home. And again, did we have a SOC at WACA? Yes, we had a SOC. Does Lockheed Martin have a SOC? Yeah, sure they do. Does a small and mid-sized business? No, probably not. So we're making this technology available to the small and mid-sized businesses. Traditional AV versus MDR and EDR. Antivirus has been around for a good 20 years now. And old school AV was pretty crude. And the way that AV had worked 15, 20 years ago is you had a piece of malicious logic, you would hash it, which means fingerprinting it, you put it in a database, so when we see it again, we know what it looks like. It's just like a fingerprint in a database, it's an exact match. Now EDR and MDR don't do that. EDR and MDR, and EDR means endpoint detection and response, MDR is managed detection and response, and yes, they have that pattern matching capability built into them, but they also have pattern recognition capability. Pattern recognition capability. So if you take that fingerprint and then erase part of it or alter part of it, it's going to know that that this is my perp. It can look at the payload. It can analyze code. It analyzes behavior. What is this executable doing? It's launching PowerShell. It's messing with the registry. It's playing around permissions. It's trying to send out traffic to some port that it shouldn't be. So MDR and EDR can look at all of these things and then see what it's doing and then determine if something's malicious and then shut it down. And probably the best analogy I have for this, AV would be like an old car that just has seatbelts and crumple zones. I'm a big car nerd. One of the cars I have at home is like that. It's an old Mercedes S-Class. It was the safest thing you could buy. If the car's 40 years old, it still runs fine. It has crumple zones and seatbelts. That's it. Now, MDR and EDR, that would be like I have a 2020 Buick, and if I'm driving that and not paying attention, a kid runs out in front of it, the car's going to stop itself, right? It has lane keep assist, it has collision avoidance, it has ABS, traction control, yaw sensors, all this other stuff. So AV and MDR and EDR are just so much more advanced than old school AV, to the point I don't know. I wouldn't want my kids driving a car with just seatbelts and crumple zones. You want them to have something that has airbags and ABS and all these other things. And probably one of the best things about EDR and MDR is it has an undo feature built into it. You ever delete a paragraph out of Word or a column out of Excel? What do you do nowadays? You just hit undo, right, and then it comes back. So when EDR and MDR detect this malicious activity, it could A, stop it, and then B, actually reverse what it did in real time. And my favorite example of this is, if you remember the WannaCry attack for a couple years ago, that was one nasty bug because that thing was based on a payload that was built by the NSA and then leaked out. That was called Eternal Blue, that thing. And North Korea got a hold of it and they wrapped it in a worm. And a worm is something that propagates from system to system without any human interaction. And then they wrapped a ransomware function into it. That could have made an unbelievable amount of money if they did it correctly, but the North Koreans are not very good capitalists. But that was a nasty one. And they set it free in Europe first. And the systems that had regular antivirus on it, they were all crushed. But the systems that had Sentinel-1 on them, which is available to all of you through ACS, they detected this and crushed it day one, even though it was designed by the NSA, it had never been seen before. And as recently as 6 or 7 years ago, you couldn't even get EDR in the small to mid-sized business. If you called up Sentinel-1 and say, hey, I want to buy Sentinel-1, they would say, great, how many thousands of seats do you want? 1,000, 5,000? So through business partnerships with ConnectWise and other companies, we've been able to make these licenses available to small businesses to prevent the first part of my presentation, this technology. The goal is to prevent these things from happening to you to begin with. I have a slide here in our cyber research unit, and I won't spend too much time on it, automation, research, intelligent threat hunting. And again, I mean, Warren, how many endpoints do we have under management? It's hundreds of thousands, right? So ConnectWise ultimately has hundreds of thousands of endpoints under management, and the overwhelming majority of them are in small businesses. Some of these are 2 or 3 terminals. It could be 10, could be 50, might be 100 or more than that. And there's a couple of stragglers that are kind of big. But the reason why that matters is because we know more about the threats that are coming on the small to mid-sized business than anybody, because that's who we serve primarily, almost entirely.
If we're just relying on Microsoft, Apple updates, is that doing MDR or is that just the standard?
No. That's a whole different thing. We're going to get into defense in depth. That's one part of a defense in depth strategy. That would be like having a castle and then just pulling up the door, but not having a moat, not having any archers, not putting your crown jewels up in the highest tower or any of that. That's just one piece of a defense in depth strategy. It's just patching alone will definitely not protect you. So we're going to talk about security and risk assessments, and this is something that I'd like all of you to talk to ACS about when we finish up here, because who knows, who in here has a good idea what your threat profile is like today? How comfortable are you with that, knowing what your cybersecurity threat is like? Maybe, you don't know what you don't know. So I have an analogy here. Oh, what happened? Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. Wow, it actually shuts it off. That's kind of neat. How about that? See anything wrong here? This is a service entrance cable head. And the reason I have this, everybody's seen this, right? Does anybody know what's wrong with it? Anybody have knowledge of electricians here, anything like that? You don't know what you don't know. So this one, when it rains, water will get on this, it'll run down into the weatherhead, and it'll short this out, right? It has no drip loop. This one is a drip loop. So when these wires get wet, it's going to run down here, and it's going to drip off. It doesn't get up into the weatherhead. So this one's wrong, and that one's correct. That's my house, by the way. And the reason I point out, because it's just an oddball little thing, I didn't know that until I had a building inspector show it to me, or I looked it up in the National Electric Code. So when you have an assessment done by ACS, you're going to get a couple pages of these things. You'll be like, well, I didn't know this. This is not my core competency. I'm not an expert. This is ACS's lane. So you'll get a report. This being in Boston and all, I figured I'd throw in a picture of my house. And my son that's sitting over there in the corner ripped the front off of it like that, and we started painting it. The place was built in 1760. It's a lot of work. Defense in depth. This is what defense in depth looks like. These are all the things that we need for a well-designed cybersecurity solution for your business. And at places like Lockheed Martin or General Electric or Wells Fargo, we have all of these things. We do a security assessment, DNS protection, mobile device security, computer updates. That's just one piece. So we have 15 different things up here. And the computer updates is just one of those 15 things. Multi-factor authentication, encryption, firewall, cyber insurance are all parts of these. But the very first thing that we need to do is a security assessment because we don't know what we don't know. And it's kind of like, you know, I turned 50 this year, and you turn 50, you go to the doctor, and it's time for certain tests you don't want to get. But you need that information in order to make good decisions. You know, you go to the doctor and they take your blood pressure, and you know, they weigh you and they check your blood and your vitals and all that stuff, and then they give you a report so that you can make good decisions. That's kind of what a security assessment is like, in a way. So I have an analogy. We're going to talk about the security assessment a little bit. This is a house. Everybody lives in a house or an apartment. At least I hope you do. None of you look like you live in a car or a refrigerator box. I don't like animated slides. I'm going to fix this. Let me just go through this here. How am I doing on time? 46 minutes. Okay, so we've got a couple more minutes yet. So if we're going to do a security assessment, let's say we want to design a security system for our house. The first thing we're going to do is identify, well, what is it we want to protect, right? And this, we want to protect our crown jewels, and our crown jewels is our family and probably our pets, a dog, cat, rabbits, chickens, ducks, turkeys, all of which I have. The next one would be collectibles, maybe grandpa's watch, you know, grandma's ring, documents and valuables, passports, diplomas, electronics and computers, things. These phones are $1,000. My house is on fire. I'd probably grab the phone along, have the dog under one arm and the phone under the other. I don't know. Kids, my kids can walk. I don't think I have to carry them out of the house if it's burning. The next thing we're going to do is protect the house. We need to put in doors and windows, locks, educate the family. Yard signs, a yard sign, incidentally, that's what we call deterrent control. And all it does is deter. Let's say that we have two houses that are identical in every way. The lights are off, you get a Lexus in the driveway, they're nice houses. One house has an ADT sign and the other one doesn't, and perp is probably going to pick the one without the signs. They might not even have an alarm. That's what we call deterrent control. Other examples of deterrent controls are going to be things like lights. Or if you go into a casino, look at the ceiling, you see all the cameras. Some percentage of those cameras aren't real. That's what we call deterrent control. It's a way to save money. And if you go to a place that has lots and lots of cameras, chances are, and I'm not telling you to gamble with this or anything, but chances are some of them aren't real. So now we're going to detect. In order to detect, we need alarms, motion sensors, doorbell cameras, neighborhood watch. And after that, we need to respond. Dog. You know, a dog is something, and just like technology, a dog could protect, detect, and respond. There's some types of technology that could do multiple different things. You might have insurance, police. We don't even have a police department where I live. We're out in the fruit belt. Maybe have some type of weapon. And the last piece is going to be recover. But up at the top here, we have identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And this isn't by mistake. These things come directly from the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, National Institute for Standards and Technology. The CSF is complicated. You could probably make 2-semester college course out of it. It's sort of like the National Electric Code. It's a standard. But everything that ConnectWise does and our partners do ultimately flows down from the cybersecurity framework, and it's a way to standardize cybersecurity and then make it scalable, make it approachable for small businesses. And then identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. These are the 5 functions. There are 23 families. There's 108 controls. And then all the interpretation comes out of NIST 800-53, which is about 500 pages, which is not fun to read. But we do it anyway because that's our jobs. So this is what the right cybersecurity looks like. We have to identify. And then as part of our cybersecurity program, we're always going to be doing one of these things. We start with identify. That's going to be our assessment. And once we do identification, we go into protect and detect mode, and we want to spend most of our time in protect and detect. But we know that someday that tropical storm or that Cat 1 or that Cat 3 or heaven forbid that Cat 5 is going to come in. And that's when we're going to respond and recover, just like our partner in Kenosha that I was talking about. They had an event and they had to respond. Then after the fact, after the mob subsided and the fire stopped and electricity came back on, now it's time to recover. And a cybersecurity incident is a lot like that. Some of them are extremely nasty, and they do that on purpose. They're going to put as much pain as they can on you in order to get you to pay. They're very entrepreneurial. They're capitalistic, and like I said, it's just good old-fashioned stagecoach robbery for the most part. Most of the time, it's not personal. There's some other, there's outliers though. Sometimes they will run a ransomware attack when what they really want is something over here. So they keep you busy over here with this ransomware attack. The amount of ransomware attack and your entire team is over here responding to this thing. And meanwhile, they're actually over here stealing this when you're not paying attention. We've seen that stuff in big businesses at times. They don't normally see that in small businesses because you tend not to have high-value data that they want. But if you have, you know, plans for some subassembly in the B-3 bomber or something like that. Is it the B-3, the one that's up in B-21? I can't remember, the brand new one that's coming out, B-2 bomber, whatever it is. You can have a bunch of them.
Can I ask a question about ransomware?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you've spoken to people in the past where they paid the ransom, but then it's still there, right? Like they are still in the background. Like obviously the protection, the detect, and the response, but it's still there, correct?
What is still there?
So what we've heard in the past is where somebody comes in, it gets infected, you pay the ransom, they then give you back all your data, but they're still on the network.
Oh, sure. Yeah, persistent access. Yeah, sure. They're not just going to leave. You know what I mean? And not only that, nowadays it's not just ransom. They get you coming and going. First, they encrypt all your data, right? When they'll exfiltrate all your data, they take it, right? And then they encrypt what you have, and then you pay to encrypt it, and they tell you, oh, we got your customer list. Pay us again, or we're going to tell all of your customers that. Or if you say, oh, we're not going to pay, because maybe you have functioning backups. And I say, well, guess what? We got your data. We're going to tell all of your customers you don't take cybersecurity seriously. And if you have some kind of data, they might say, well, we're going to leak the data if you don't pay. So they have multiple different ways to steal money from you. And again, it's just good old-fashioned robbery. But a lot of businesses, there's a significant portion of small businesses that go out of business because of this stuff if they're not ready for it. Is there any other questions, comments?
Just say quickly that I worked with ACS as well, and every single time we've recovered without paying ransomware, every single time that threat happened. Within 1 week after it's been returned, just letting you know we have all your data. You are not safe, you are not secure, we have access to all your information. We're gonna leak what you're charging your clients, we're gonna leak your client information, we're gonna do this. You have to be confident that they don't have that in that process, and I mean, I don't know if you could elaborate on that a little bit. I mean, it's literally been every single time. We probably dealt with maybe 10 incidents in the last 2 years that were larger.
Right.
And it was mostly people who didn't have multi-factor authentication, who didn't have a lot of these foundational tools in place. And then what happens at the end of that is the recovery happens, and then we have to implement them anyway. Because it's a requirement by the insurance carriers, it's a requirement by the business partners, it's a requirement across the board. But every single time, right around day 7 to 10, that email comes in to an executive or to people within the organization saying, by the way, if you don't pay, all this information is getting leaked. We have your information, we have this. And 90% of the time, it's been false. But one time, they did try. They did pretend like they were going to. Where they sent out an email to clients saying that they had information, but it didn't actually. It was just...
They'll make empty threats at times, sure. Yeah, they're pretty unscrupulous. You know, another thing too that's interesting about these ones that are overseas, particularly in Russia, you have people that rotate back and forth between the state security organs like the FSB and the SVR and organized crime. So that would be like if somebody with the FBI was working with the mob. So you have these state-backed advanced persistent threats, and they're developing malicious logic, and then you have somebody that's a criminal, and they carry it out with them to their ransomware shop, and they give it to their people. So it's weapons-grade malicious logic. There's just so much of this going on. But there's a lot that we could massively reduce the risk of these things, the impact of these things happening by doing a couple small things and then a couple of bigger things. And it's all kind of systematic. And I love that earlier quote about security is not something that you just pay for, it's something you do. It's like fitness. I can't pay a trainer and say I want to lose 20 pounds and just write a check. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot like safety or fitness. It's something that we have to do as an organization. And all of that starts with an assessment, of course. And I think that Tim is going to talk about assessments briefly before we finish up.
Yeah, but before, I'd like one other question. You mentioned the 15 points, right, of protection of what they need, what there is like DNS filtering, spam filtering, multi-factor authentication, security assessment. There's a bunch in there. You mentioned in previous slides earlier that we've made it cheaper. You folks have made it cheaper for us to access things like EDR.
Yeah.
I mean, we have ACS, we have certain standards where we bring our clients in, and Mike was just mentioning that we've had certain instances where people haven't met those standards. And if they're not meeting those standards, us as a managed managed service provider, we can't support that client because who we are and we manage multiple clients, we can't have them then get affected to other people. So if a company comes in, they get infected, they can access through us. So a lot of people aren't realizing the managed service providers are also getting attacked. So we have to have certain standards in place. So the reason why there's 15 points that we need to do, we have to have a certain standard to get there. And that's why we bring in people like Warren and people like Jason from a cybersecurity standpoint, because it's wicked important. I think Mark mentioned it at the beginning. I mean, it's a hot topic.
Yeah, the MSPs themselves, they're big targets because they're trying to get in, they're trying to get to the clients in some cases.
Without a doubt.
So Jason, he brought up that database investigative report, DBIR. My group actually produced that report when I was working with Verizon. So we have a lot of financial people here. So the financial sector is always number one and number two in terms of threats. Phishing, ransomware. So I just want, as we leave and you wrap up the thought here, is that the industry, what you do, you are very large targets.
Anything that's capital intensive, very attractive target. Like yeah.
I mean, I've had numerous phishing attacks where I've had a CFO has been tricked into doing some sort of financial transaction, okay? So it's just my thought, or my comments to leave you with is to be diligent, recognize the controls that you have, utilize an ACS, look at the assessments, understand your risk, because you are, from a financial perspective, you are the number one, number two risk industry in terms of cyber. That's what we see. And when we're producing the DBIR report, we started it back in 2011. Okay, now we've got, I'm telling you now maybe, 2021. That report comes out annually, okay? And financial services was always, I'm not with them anymore, Connect was, but financial services was always number one. Always number one and number two in terms of healthcare was also there. So I just, be diligent. I know you guys are big about controls, assessments. Just pay attention to that and recognize that you are a risk, you are a profile, you are a target. So just be cautious, be careful, be diligent.
So you did mention the free assessment. We actually do free assessments for all CFMA members because we're a business partner too. So if anybody wants a free assessment, my business cards, there's a bunch of ACS branded stuff over there. If you want to grab something, my business card's over there. If you want to talk to one of us
Please do this. And I would like everybody in here to have some type of organizational goal to go back and say we're going to get it done in Q4 or Q1, and just set some type of a goal to get an assessment done. And then you could start your decision-making process from there. I can't stress that enough.
I know the food's ready. Christina had all the food, but Jason, I really appreciate it. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks for listening to me blab for an hour.
You guys want to grab some food? You can do that for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll do some whiskey. Thank you.
Got to have priorities. Thanks. I'm a little sweaty, pardon me. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.